Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the 20s Detox. I'm Bianca, your host, where we dive into all the things that I'm learning and unlearning in my 20s to elevate this decade. Before we get into this episode, make sure to download the episode, share it with a friend. Also follow along every single Tuesday. I will put up an episode either relating to seasonal guidance or advice in your 20s. And don't forget to rate the podcast in case you have been listening for some time and you are enjoying it. That always helps me out and just lets me know that I'm doing a good job and you're liking the content that I'm making. So yeah, it is officially spring. I already released a Q1 blueprint in the beginning of January, and this one is going to be the Q2 blueprint. For those of you who don't know, a lot of this episode is going to be based off of my guide, Align Your Life with the Seasons. It's available for purchase on my website. The guide is basically for seasonal dreamers, people that always want to get things done and have big dreams. They're very creative and they can't seem to accomplish them in the way that they'd like. This guide is very, very different than anything else out there related to planning. I don't plan with the New Year, New Me January. I align everything to match what is happening in nature outside. In the wintertime, it's hibernation, rest, dreaming. In the springtime, there's blooming. It's wild. It's fast. That is the energy that we're going to be talking with today. In the summertime, the weeds are full blown. So we do a little bit of pivoting. We weed out some of the things that are not working. However, we're starting to see progress. We're starting to see the flowers take shape. And in the fall time, that is when the harvest happens. It's almost the best time of the year when we get to finally see all of the success that we've made. I'm telling you, because I've done that, I was able to get myself a car. I was able to move out. I was able to not have so much financial anxiety. I was able to advocate for myself more in relationships with my boyfriend, with my parents, with anybody. It felt like the missing puzzle piece in this intense desire to get things done world. Like, I am very much still in hustle culture. I love to work. I love to do things, but I found myself in these cycles of burnout, and I was never, ever not in those cycles. And I found that this was the missing piece. And the reason why it works is because, especially when we're young, we think more on like the next week or the next few weeks or the next month. Not to put any of us down, our neuroplasticity is so great, so fast. We have so many great qualities to being on this age. However, we tend to forget about this long-term vision, the long-term things that happen. And in fact, that's only when it really is sustainable, is when we look long-term rather than this fast pace. In springtime, the energy is unique. For those that experienced a cold winter where it was snowing outside, April can be a little bit of a difficult month. You know, April showers brings May flowers, right? There's flooding. It's not quite warm enough to be able to do some summer activities, but it isn't cold enough to do winter activities. Everything outside looks a little bit gray, and it's arguably worse than November because with that gray comes lots of rain. So it can be a bit difficult. However, a quote that I am absolutely like in love with, because as a Pisces, a very sensitive girl who tends to cry. It's this quote that was like, I cried for months in my head, but now look at all the flowers. Not that I'm like down and crying, but crying can be cathartic, it can be good. It doesn't need to be like I am at my lowest of lows at the moment. But there's a really important message there that spring is doing here. Spring is like a season that lacks strategy, and it's for a reason. It's very bold. There is a quick switch in momentum. Rain might come very intensely. There are animals that are waking up very hungry, not thinking. They're just like starving and needing to transition into not hibernating anymore. There are trees that might prematurely bud. Waves of birds are migrating back to where we are because of the warmer season. There's a lot of this like intense, fast, bold energy around us. It's why a lot of us feel like really like buzzing at this time of the year. And it's weird because we have this like buzzingness. We don't really know how to alchemize it very well because when we look outside, it's still really gray. But what we forget is the earth is at the exact same frequency of that buzzing. I don't know if any of you have like micro sprouts, like you go and you buy micro sprouts from the grocery store, but there are reasons for why those sprouts are expensive, first of all, and also so packed with nutrients. And it's because that teeny sprout has the exact same amount of nutrients as when it is full grown. So if you have like spinach sprouts, that spinach sprout has the same amount of nutrients as if you ate the entire mature spinach like bundle come the summer. Some sprout very fast. Like the beginning stages are very fast, and then it reaches a plateau where it starts to grow more gradually. Why is this important? Like, why am I sharing all this? Because there's so many elements out in nature that are going to show how we should now approach the next 90 days. In the wintertime, I did not really have any major goals that I was going for. The purpose of winter for me was to reconnect with that dream-like state that I had, absorb a lot of art, a lot of great content. Books mainly were my primary source, and I thought that was really unlike me because I tend to binge TV shows, and I also was getting more into movies, which is also unlike me because I find that I can't sit through the length of movies now anymore. They're all like 2 to 3 hours long. So I rather just avoid them, or I just go see them in theaters when like it's intentional. And then I will just watch more TV shows that are like an hour. However, I just like been reading a lot, like fantasy books. All of you guys already know I'm almost done Fourth Wing series. Well, there's another book coming, but done the third book. I have just been loving it. I've been loving the slowness and just like being more connected with a slower way of living. And I feel like it has set this foundation for me to feel really like rested. Not just like mentally, because like there's things happening every day. There's a lot emotionally, mentally, all that stuff. But I mean, like, I think there really needs to be seasons when we're not achieving anything, because when you have that break in the wintertime, it's to unlearn the association that a lot of us make where we tie our worth with achievements and with productivity. So to have 90 days where you purposely don't go for a goal, you're starting to ask, where can I start to love myself even more beyond my achievements? And that sets a really good foundation of self-love to spring, so that when we do take that action, we're able to stay resilient and persevere through the hard times because of that foundation we've built. Now, if you guys are just coming in now being like, I have no idea what you're talking about, I don't know what to do here when I have not done that and I've tried all of goals through the winter time, I'm going to give you guys some tips today. And there are still some tips in the guide to just remember to carry through the spring season that you can do. Like if you guys wanted to get the guide, you can do the guide in spring, starting spring. It's better to start now with this than later, because once you get into, I was just talking to somebody, I asked like, how's the guide going? She's like, once you start it, you're like, oh my gosh, like, why have we not been living like this? I don't want to just say like, oh, because you guys haven't done this in winter, it's not going to work. It's still going to let you pay attention to the energies outside and have that really like bring you forward in this like momentum. So like I said, spring is this boldness, this big momentum. After I've done like that reflection on my wheel of life, I'll share like the episode that I did that with you guys. But after you reflect on your wheel of life, or even if you don't want to do the wheel of life, say you have like a good idea of the things you want to pursue for the next 90 days or next year ahead, really, you start to create like this strategy of habits. Like a lot of us tend to think too big when we forget about the small daily habits that get us to where we need to go. For example, if a big goal for you is to save, say, $5,000 this year and put it into a sinking fund. A sinking fund can be things where you put that money into like traveling or gifts or things that are not really for an investment and not for living. It's like literally purely for like fun. And so say you want to save $5,000 in your sinking fund so that come the next year, you're able to use that for joy going forward. That is a big goal, right? You need to learn how to break up that goal so that it is attainable moving forward. And so for the next 180 days, so spring and summers, when we really lock in, that is when you can start creating strategies that work for you. You're going to hear so many people now in the spring and summer tell you the specific fitness routines to do, what you should eat, how you should communicate with your partner, the best financial strategies, what you should be doing with your money, what to invest in, what stocks. Like I like to say to people, because it's funny, I am in this realm, but I strongly dislike a lot of self-help. It's too black and white in the ways that people describe. Listen to me. You know what's best for you. You know what strategies work for you. You know what would align with you. You can use tools and research and all that. Like, don't disregard the importance of knowledge to be able to do that, but gather these tools to shape your decision versus just adopting other people's decisions, because that gets really confusing. I've had to like really unsubscribe to many creators about relationship advice, just how to be a woman in a relationship, what to look for. I think that it was really starting to confuse me with my own values and what I needed. And it's funny because years ago, there was this fitness creator that I had followed for years, and she had kind of like dropped off the face of the earth. And she came back and she was like, I started to realize why I was never satisfied with my progress. And it was because I was listening to too many people. There's people going to say, you should say this to your partner, and this is how you should express yourself to your partner, or this is how you should raise your kid, or this is how you should deal with your money. And then there could be a few days later, you're scrolling on Instagram, somebody's saying the complete opposite. And so there's a lot of this like back and forth and confusion that makes you question what is really meant for you. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you are choosing your goals and your targets and these little baby steps to work towards, I can't tell you what is going to be the best thing. You need to find it for yourself, and you need to be honest with yourself. Because this way you are able to create a system that is you coded, not anybody else. And what could this mean? Like, let's go back to finances. There's two really main types of people that I see with finances. There's people that are more like me, want to save for like every single rainy day, and it brings anxiety to spend money. And then there's other people that don't have that anxiety and they spend their money, but they have a hard time looking at their bank account. Like, I have no problem looking at my bank account. I think I look at it too much. And then there are the other people that don't look at it enough. So I think making sure you're journaling, you're working through these things so that you're understanding, where are my barriers and how can I make this as easy as possible? That's a key thing. How do I make this easier for myself to succeed? So if we're going back to the example of saving like $5,000 for a sinking fund, how do I make this easier for myself to succeed? Maybe doing budgeting on a weekly basis is too much for me. So I'm going to do a monthly basis. Maybe the strategy of that budgeting doesn't actually work for me, and I need to, right in the beginning of the month, put that money aside versus doing it at the end of the month. Fitness wise, maybe, sticking to a 5-day schedule doesn't really work for you because you have a uterus and you're very influenced by your menstrual symptoms. So you need to make sure that you stay flexible during that time so that you can still support your menstrual cycle while still showing up for yourself. If it is nutrition, say restrictive diets don't really work well for you. So rather than take things out of your diet, you just decide to add more things in. So you add more vegetables, you add more fruits, you add more fiber versus having a really restrictive way of viewing it. If it is more entrepreneurial and creative, maybe you're noticing you have a lot of ideas. You have no problem thinking of really cool ideas and brainstorming and doing that. Your issues come through sitting down and getting down to that work. So potentially what's good is creating these little targets, weekly habits, stuff like that, so that you're able to get more small things done in a specific way. I just gave like a bunch of random ideas from the top of my head. So I do encourage that you do your own research. You get the books you need to get. You get what is going to get you through the next 90 days to stay consistent. That is the key thing here. Staying consistent. I had one thing in my guide that I had added this year for people, and it was to not think about the success that you want here of it looking a certain way. I want you to just stay consistent for 90 days. So I want you to know after 90 days, you didn't slip too much on staying consistent. However, you're not going to see it as you need to make linear progression. So, for example, with fitness, you're staying consistent. Maybe you go to the gym 3 times a week like you said you would. However, maybe those 3 times that week, they were all at different intensities because you had different energy. Maybe one week you had more intensity than the other week, but regardless, you showed up. Maybe sometimes you just showed up to the gym and then you drove back home. But the importance is that you stayed consistent with it. You are showing up for yourself. Reason why this is so important is because when you just decide to show up, you show up on the mat, you show up and you look at your bank account, you show up and you try to do the budgeting. Even if you didn't do everything you were wanting to do, you opened up your screen and you did that. You are slowly but surely building your self-efficacy and your confidence here to be able to be like, I can do things. I can do it. And also, I don't need to subscribe to an all or nothing mindset. I can show up imperfectly. When you look at spring and you sprinkle down like a bunch of these different seeds to sprout, only some of those seeds are you going to use to mature. The other ones might not work and they might die off. Think of that as you showing up every single day, looking at all of them. Some days you do really well, other days you don't do really well. But regardless, we're all showing up. We're all showing up to the best of our abilities. Also, in the beginning of the spring, sometimes the flowers will come just as soon as they'll go. It's the summer where a lot of the vegetation lasts. The springtime, it's these rapid turnovers. So I don't really want you to think strategic. All I want for you to do is show up. That's all. It doesn't need to be perfect. You don't need to look a certain way. It doesn't need to be a certain way. It's just you showing up and doing that thing. Because later in a different quarter, you're going to be fine-tuning it. As a final piece of advice, I think it can be really difficult and like it might be naive for me to think, oh, show up and don't be hard on yourself if it doesn't look a certain way. What you can do beyond just showing up to reprogram this is really just like get into your affirmations again, your mirroring practices, and just reminding yourself of how great you are, of how hard you're trying. And remember that you don't need to show up perfectly. You just need to show up. You just need to show up. You don't even need to show up on time. You just need to show up, because that is going to get you through it. When you have those affirmations with you, you are going to get through it. I hope that this episode kind of vibed with you and made you excited for spring in an entirely different way, because I think all of us know about like the spring cleaning that comes and a lot of the spring activities and the spring vibe that you can do, but this is unique and it is all thanks to nature's influence of what's going on outside. So I hope that you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.